Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Townsend Institute podcast series, and happy third anniversary to Tips. Joined here today by Gilbert and John. Hello. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Hey, everybody. You know, when children turn 3, they're kind of terrible, but we hope this won't be terrible.
That's right.
I hope not. But we're trying something new, right? For those of you that are listening to us in our audio platform, welcome again to another episode of Tips. But maybe you're joining in for the first ever video episode of the podcast.
Yes. And you can see that on YouTube, I think, right? I think YouTube is where we're putting it. So
all over the nightly news, we'll see. It might come across your screen in a bunch of different ways. Well, we figured 3 years of podcast episodes, it's time to jump in and try something new. So here we are. And what better way to try our first video episode than with Dr. Townsend himself, and again, celebrating the third anniversary of this podcast with you, our community. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners and our dozens of podcast guests we've had over the years. We have some fun in store for you all today. So our plan for today is we are going to revisit here on our third anniversary 3 just special episodes. All of our episodes have been special and have hopefully provided insight and tips to all of you, our listeners. But we're going to take a little walk down memory lane and revisit 3 of those, maybe kind of speak into them a bit more. A couple of these guests are guests we haven't heard from in, a year or 2 years. So it'll be kind of fun to revisit these awesome conversations we've had.
They're a bit on the evergreen level, I think, if we curated them. These have lasted a long time, and I think they'll be helpful to people's lives and businesses and relationships for a long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they all touch on the various programs that we offer here, of course, at the Townsend Institute. We, of course, offering master's and doctoral degrees and certificates as well in our mental health counseling, organizational leadership, and executive coaching and consulting. So if you are listening in as a current student, a future student, a former student, or again, just a loyal listener of the podcast, we know there will be something for you here today.
And the newest program, right? I mean, we can talk about it now when this comes out, the PhD in executive coaching and leadership.
That's right. Gilbert's our program director for our new PhD that will be starting soon. And we are excited about that. That's for sure. Long time coming.
And did you say that the research says there may not be another one out there where you can get your doctorate in both coaching and leadership? I think you said it's very rare, right?
Oh, yeah. No, that's why I'm saying it's the, right? I mean, just like how Ohio State people say the Ohio State University, I'm going with the executive coaching and leadership PhD. So that's our marketing. You can put that out there.
There you
now.
go. Coming to a coffee cup near you soon.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be great. It'll be great.
I love that.
So, yeah.
Well, as we start off this anniversary episode, we're going to start with our first of these 3 episodes. We're going to be walking down and hopefully hearing and watching some clips from these from the past as well. So who better to start with than our friend, our fellow, and just a great partner of the Institute now as well. That's Bob Goff. I unfortunately was not present at this interview because this was recorded live at the American Association of Christian Counselors Conference, AACC, in a loud and crowded auditorium. This is our friend, our fellow, and just great partner of the Institute, Bob Goff. So John and Gilbert, take us back a couple years, if you can remember sitting in this crowded room and what that interview was like to sit down and talk with Bob.
What's it like for you, Gilbert?
Well, yeah, I just want to cue our listeners in a little bit on a couple things that went on for me, a little bit of context, right? We talk about imposter syndrome and adulthood, right? So here I am. I've done very few podcasts. I'm supposed to sit in this crowded, thousands of people walking around, and I'm supposed to kind of interview, moderate here with Dr. John Townsend and Bob Goff. And so, yeah, there were a lot of prayers and a lot of thoughts like, what in the world am I doing? And so, yeah, that was what it was like for me. But I'll tell you, once we got it going, Bob and John, you all just went with it, and it was a lot of fun. So, yeah. What about for you, John?
I just remember how calm, cool, and collected you were, Gilbert. So that part's good. American Association of Christian Counselors is a great partner with the Institute. Thousands of Christian counselors. I've been their clinical director for many, many years. And Bob was in town at the conference speaking, as I was too. And so the team put us together. And I just remember how much great connection there was with Bob, because that's what Bob is. He's a connector. And people were kind of gathered around, walking around, picking up their swag from all the different booths. And they stopped and just watched, because Bob is Bob. It was great.
Yeah.
Yes. Bob is Bob, that's for sure. And I think one of the things that makes Bob so special is, John, he really aligns with you too. Both of you really get this idea of presence. Right now, over the last couple years, since this first initial podcast episode was recorded, me, myself, Gilbert, our entire institute has gotten to know Bob just so much more closely, right? And we understand this idea that the two of you really value presence. You're very good at kind of blocking out the noise. So as I went back and listened to this episode, again, recorded a couple years ago, one of the things that really stuck out to me is just how similar, John, you and Bob are with this idea of presence. You both are just so good at being able to filter out the noise, right, that can really impede our relationships. And this is part of what Bob talks about in his books, specifically Undistracted. We've started to incorporate some of this into our course curriculum here at the Institute as we start to build the Bob Goff Center with this enhanced partnership that we have.
Yes.
And Bob uses this metaphor of junk mail. Right? Just like we try to delete and get rid of the junk mail that hits our email inboxes, how important it is to really get rid of the junk mail that can impede our conversations and our relationships. So I'd like to revisit this idea a little bit, John, and someone like you who holds a very busy schedule and is traveling and writing and building and creating all the time. How have you learned to filter out the junk mail in your own life?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ashlie, and everybody deals with it. And, the distractions are not going to go away. They're there. So to say, well, I'll live in a cave for the rest of my life, it just won't happen. So they're there. And so there's strategies I use in order to be able to be emotionally present. I think about, for example, Mary and Martha, the story in the Bible, and Martha was very distracted with things she was doing. Mary was sitting there connecting. And I've learned from that story. One thing is when I switch from my task, email or writing a book or whatever, and I switch to a relationship like either a Zoom or a present, I have to really intentionally and consciously go switch gears.
Yes.
I have to switch gears from task to this person. And then once I do that, I think, what do I feel toward them? And when I do that, all of a sudden these feelings come up of care and, alignment and wanting them to be better in their lives and care and sort of like wanting the best for them. And all of a sudden I zoom in. But you have to intentionally switch gears. If you don't, you stay Martha the whole time.
Well, and John, also one thing I noticed about you that maybe you don't, maybe this is intentional, I don't know, is, when we're doing, we're a residency or we're at your house for dinner and things, you're really present. You're not checking your phone all the time. You're not, all scroll. You seem to really be. Is that something that you said, hey, this is important? I'm going to really make sure that's not distracting me.
It's a big deal because the tendency is to want to stay, with FOMO and try to check things. But what I've found is easier than you think. Really, Gilbert, if you make that transition I talked about, because once you're with people that you care about and they're interesting, you're talking about either just something funny or something about family or about a real struggle. Once you're in the relationship, you want to stay in the relationship. Present means, in a way, you kind of lose time It become this sort of like eternal moment where I see their eyes, they see my eyes, I see the feelings they're feeling and this sort of thing, and I just want to stay there. So the hardest part is the transition. I don't, as long as I feel connected to the person, I don't feel a lot of temptation to say, "Oh, let me scroll." It doesn't happen once you're in the, I would say, once you're in the river of connection.
Once you're
You
in
want
the
to stay in
river
the
of
river.
connection. That's huge. I love that idea of presence. And it really goes completely against the idea, that myth of multitasking, right? And this is, I think, something we read about in the literature. And in society, we sometimes put a gold star on those who can successfully multitask. But one thing I think you're alluding to, John, and that Bob also talks about, is that that's not a good thing. The myth of multitasking means that you're then not giving 100% or being fully present. Let's revisit that clip that Bob talked about with regards to multitasking.
Have you ever done that exercise with somebody? If you're listening to this, you could do it with your kids or coworkers, but just say, give me the first 3 letters of the alphabet. Go ahead.
ABC.
And now the first 3 numbers, starting with 1.
1, 2, 3.
Now the next 4 letters.
DEF.
Now the next 3 numbers. Now the next 5 letters. So this is the myth of multitasking.
Yeah.
And so it's the ABC 1, 2, 3, like you can leave that to Michael Jackson, but like the whole idea is to, like, it's the switching of gears, it's the grinding of gears. Where did I leave off? Where am I starting? And so this being constantly interrupted is like yikes, that's delightful, but I'm trying to be inefficient in the way that I love people. I can be efficient in many other areas in my life. Directions on the highway, I want to be super efficient. The way that I do a law, I want to be super efficient. But when it comes to law, this is this paradox of faith, that we could be just wildly inefficient in the way that we love people.
Love that, right? Great advice and something to think about, right? In terms of where are we placing our time and our attention, and are we given the 100% presence where it needs to be?
I can give a little challenge to our so I say viewers or listeners or everything.
Both.
We've got both now, John. We've got both.
Yeah.
Here's a little challenge to test for you. Go linear for one day. Just go one event or one relationship or one conversation, then back, and don't try to email while you do it. Just do linear, one thing at a time, and then evaluate what you got done relationally and on your task at the end of the day by 5 o'clock. And you'll go, that was worth it.
It's great. I love that. Great advice. And again, like you mentioned, with all of the distractions in our world, how difficult it can be to tune those out. But it's not impossible, right? It definitely takes some effort on our part. And that's, I think, one thing that we talk about in our institute with our students, right? How important that is to develop those habits of presence and focus, and we all live in a very distracted world, right? You just have to take you don't even have to take a foot outside your door anymore for the distractions to impede us, and just how important it is to, as Bob talked about in the same interview, just be where your feet are at that moment, right? Not looking ahead 10 minutes or 10 months or 10 years down the line, but be where you are.
Yeah. Well, another thing that we talked about in that interview that I think really kind of landed with me, because we hadn't created that when we did this interview, the Center for Bob Goff, is the legacy part, and focus on intentionality and all of that. Can we play that little clip there? Because we didn't know what was coming when we talked about that.
Paul talks about our highest and best. So what I'm trying to do is say, what's the highest and best? Not like, could I? Because I could do all kinds of stuff, both good and bad. But is that the highest and best? And so for a guy who's 65, about to collect Social Security, which I'm so Gilbert, thank you for paying into the system. I'm going to be on the dole here. But what I want to do is to say, is this something that's going to help me with my legacy? Is this something that I'm known for or something I'm remembered for? And I'm switching to remembered for. I don't know when I'm going to end up in a jar on somebody's mantle. Actually, I prefer an hourglass. I want to spend 45 minutes with Grandpa Bob. It's either brilliant or morbid or a little of both. But to just say, what do I want to be remembered for? And I want to be remembered for the guy that's available. And so that just makes it really simple, the thing when People
what made that? I mean, of all the things he could have said, you landed on that. What was behind all that?
It was like looking at Jesus, like, here he is, God, yet he's the most available person in the world. Somebody tugs on his tunic and he's like, who is that? There's a little dude in a sycamore tree and he says, lunch on you. He had time for people. And so it strikes me that like the first thing God makes is time.
That's wonderful. I love that imagery, right? What do you want to be remembered for? And that legacy piece, because again, we didn't know a couple years ago when this episode was recorded that we would create this enhanced partnership with Bob and now have the Bob Goff Center here at the Townsend Institute to hopefully have some of those legacy pieces remembered. What do you think of that, John, as somebody who has, written and published dozens and dozens of books, his first textbook coming out here soon? What do you think about that idea of that legacy piece?
Yeah, Ashley, it's a really big deal because we want our life to really count for the future. And I look at it in terms of progression of time, past, present, future. I look at what are you doing right now? This is to all our viewers and listeners. What are you doing right now that matters? And there's going to be a future where you want to, there'll be some impact you leave. And who knows, impact for a business or for ministry or as a parent or as a friend or whatever. And we only got the present for that. We don't have anything else. So when you think about what's going well now, where am I making good strokes to make the world a better place? And how do I develop that, learn about it, do things about it, have conversations about it? So build your present looking to the future. And that's the way people leave a good legacy. They don't start off life saying, I want a legacy. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I've just started college. I'm a freshman. You don't know anything yet. I didn't. But once I'm doing something significant, how do I build on it?
And part of it goes back to what we just talked about, right? That how important it is to be present, right?
Yes.
To be present in those relationships and build that. Well, one of the last pieces of Bob that we can't talk about Bob Goff without talking about this idea of radical availability, right? I don't think there's anyone out there, especially that has such a following and audience like Bob. And perhaps this is how he's gotten some of it. He publishes his phone number in the back of all of his books. And now, after a few years of this close friendship and relationship, we've gotten to see firsthand Bob's phone ring and him pick it up. And it is a loyal listener and follow of Bob. And he sits there, and sometimes it's a short 30-second conversation. Hey, how you doing? What you up to? And other times it goes deeper than that. Let's talk about this idea of radical availability, being present, but also at the same time, still keeping firm in boundaries to protect those relationships and that time. What are your ideas on this availability, John?
I could never do it. But I have called Bob's number just for grins, and he didn't pick up. He didn't pick up for me, though. But it's a wonderful idea because when he's available, and Bob has a great life. He's got a great marriage, great kids, great business. And so, he's not always on the phone. But the way I look at it, I kind of build models and like ways to look at things. And I always see the availability issue as you got to sit down and map out your monthly calendar. See, most people don't know their weekly schedule because, there's a lot of play in that. But in a month, you'll kind of see a cycle. What's your monthly calendar? And where is my necessary things for, self-help and, working out and work and family? And there got to be these white spaces, not just kind of recovery, because recovery is, takes time too, but where there's really availability. And I always tell people that's when the people that just kind of come spontaneously in your life, spend time with them, have a phone call with them, text them or whatever, or have lunch with them. And I always say, and I Henry Cloud and I wrote a bunch of books called Boundaries, so I believe in boundaries. But sometimes overdo it by a percentage. Overdo it maybe by 10%, 5%. Because that's kind of what generosity is. Don't ruin your life, but put in your white spaces, and I'm available. And I call people spontaneous when I've got those spaces, and I go over just a tad because you want to care. That's a formula.
I love that.
Just a few percentage points.
A few percentage.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, Bob was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. But another one we really enjoyed was our conversation with Dr. Michelle Fleming. Right. And she talked a lot about identification and burnout, all these things, kind of knowing where you're at in the world. Because she started off in like the tech world, right? I mean, like all the, which if
computer
you know
science.
computer science, I thought, well, Michelle, how did you end up there? But because she's so relational that I would never have guessed that. So,
well, it has to do with like an extremely high IQ while you're relational, I think.
that's true. That's true. So I never got recruited for that world, but so that's okay. They kept my counselor and say, "Hey, practice saying you want fries with that." But but she talked a lot about some career pivots and all that. Do we want to play that clip maybe when she talks about burnout and how she knew that was happening?
So started out as a computer science major, and yeah, I know, graduated and realized quickly I wanted to claw my eyes out looking at a computer all day. I was like miserable in my first couple of jobs, and quickly jumped over to being technical support for sales, and then finally in sales. And I worked for multiple startup companies. The first two went under. The first one blew through, I think, 4 or 5 million venture capital, and the second one, 90 million venture capital. Yeah.
Wow.
So I've seen what not to do. I always love to say, if you give me and my grandmother 90 million, I can make a product that sells. Like, I don't know what it would be, a rubber ducky, something. Learn that, and then finally landed in one that took off and did really well around technology and the internet, and eventually had several different teams of salespeople reporting to me, and I was covering both North and South America. So it was a lot of fun, until it wasn't, till it was burnout, which is what brings us to this topic. And I realized, that it was probably all that travel preventing me from other things I wanted in my life.
My gosh. We just love Dr. Fleming, right? Friend and fellow of the Institute here, and just her authentic self and her vulnerability that she was willing to share with us, right? When things worked and when things didn't work. I think that was huge. But I think what really stood the test of time with this episode, as we listen back to this, John and Gilbert, is this idea of career pivots, right? And whether you've hit the burnout or you've hit the wall because of, reasons X, Y, Z, because we see this a lot in our students. As a graduate program, we get a lot of students coming in that have been in their vocation for 10, 20, even 30 years, but they want to make a change. They've decided, hey, I am 50 years old and I'm not feeling what I was feeling when I chose this career at 25, so I'm going to make that change. And that career pivot and how important that is. What are your thoughts on this when you think about making a change like that, perhaps maybe a bit later in life?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I have a model that I just taught a team I work with yesterday on disruptive leadership. And disruption is like, Jesus turned some tables. He was disruptive, right? And there's a positive disruption and negative disruption. But people that are finally saying, like you said, I'm not feeling it, it's probably because they felt something inside, like it's getting old, same old, same old. I'm feeling like stuck. I'm not using my gifts like I should. And so the pivot is the result of some dissatisfaction, and you need to listen to that dissatisfaction. And when you do, that helps you know what is the move I need to make. Because disruption means I've got to start doing things differently, using different muscles. I got to talk to different people in different organizations. I got to do research. I got to find out how I'm going to afford to be able to live in the transition between this job A and job B. But it's all a matter of a couple things, I think. One is, what is the big vision? Is it because, like Michelle, she's a phenomenal coach and psychologist. She decided to go more on the right brain end of things, and she wanted that part to be exercised because it's more relational, and she's more relational. The vision was, I want to have a great career, but I want it to be more relational. That's the vision. And the second thing is, who is it that can help me to make the transition? Who's been up the mountain that I have never been? Because a lot of this stuff has been done before. So find the people that have said, yeah, here's how you do it, so you don't have to make everything up.
That's a great point about not trying to go it all alone, right? I mean that's where you run into people they sometimes isolate and are gonna, they spend 800 hours on LinkedIn looking at things, but they really don't talk to people that have kind of gone a little further down the path.
Down the path. Saves you so much time and energy.
That's really interesting. Well, that was a really good piece. She talked about kind of the professional burnout and having to have those career pivots multiple times and things like that. But what I loved about Michelle, too, is she also talked about it from the interpersonal side, looking inside at her family life and how oftentimes our families can succumb to burnout just as much. Let's listen back to that clip.
Yeah, I would encourage your listeners to advocate for their family when they need to and just speak up, especially we had twins. So I had two babies and two toddlers, and I see the workforce very accommodating that. I love that. Like I worked with a dentist,
Yeah.
and I remember after working with her for a year, she said, "Thank you for letting me realize I had permission to be at my kids' school when they need me and handle or move patients." And to me, that's the win. It's like that you can balance both these things. So yeah, I would encourage folks to do what you need so you can get through it, do it well, and not burn your family out.
Well said, because I think when we think about burnout, we don't oftentimes hear it from the family side, right? It's work,
Mhm.
work, work, work. But of course, our families sometimes feel that as well. Has that shown up in your life, Gilbert? I mean, you're someone who's wearing multiple hats these days and keeping programs, launching programs, writing work. How's that
And all
impacted
three
your
kids in
family?
like 14 sports too, and he
14
coaches them
All
all.
sports,
14
yeah,
sports.
10
Yeah.
camping trips, you
Oh
name it.
my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. you know, the family part that has been a good balance because this last year, I mean, you overcommit, right? What you think is a great thing to say to yes in September, then all of a sudden you got to play it out in, February, March, April, and things like that. So I think really, like John said earlier, looking at your calendar, thinking about what's reasonable when you think about, okay, here's the conferences I'm going to go to, or the classes I'm going to teach, or the coaching we're going to do, all of that, because I kind of didn't do that a few years ago when I was doing student life stuff, and I got the wonderful gift of shingles at 38, and because I was trying to hold all that stress, and that was a really great experience for my family to have me on vacation with shingles.
That's a
So I
wake
kind
up
of
call,
learned,
isn't it?
yeah, that I kind of gotta pace this out better. But what about you, Ashley? How do you handle this? With all your family and your girls and doing,
Yeah.
well, you go to the mountains all the time too. So yeah,
I have to say, listening to some of our podcast episodes, I think that's what maybe some of our listeners don't realize is it's just as much help for
Yes.
Gilbert and I and John, right? Listening from these experts on their research and their experiences than it is anything else. I think one thing I would do is I actually have recently changed up that word balance. Right. Some
Mm.
of the research I've done and more that I've read is I've really just kind of honed in on it's not a balance because I don't believe that that's really ever achievable. Right. Instead, I really like where some of the research is going with work life harmony. What is harmonious for you in this season of your life and for your family? Because not everybody's family is made up the same way. So you have to find about what works for your marriage, your kids, with the ages they are, the activities they're in, the work that you put in and day out. What just makes you go to bed at night feeling harmony, feeling at peace with all these different things you're doing in your life? And I think instead of just this imagery of having this scale to try to
Yes.
balance things, right? Instead, it's, hey, this part of my life got a little extra attention today, and that's okay. Tomorrow, maybe it'll be this other part of my life. And so for
Mhm.
me, I think it's really kind of leaning into the work life harmony and what's working for my family and my job today. And that might not look the same a year or 10 years from now, but really today. Right? And maybe that goes back to that presence piece we were talking about.
Yeah,
So,
I think so.
well, one of the last things we do, we want to talk a little bit more about burnout because we know that this is something that so many people face, whether it's, again, your professional life, your personal, your family life. But I think what I loved about Dr. Fleming is she talked about the symptoms of burnout. Let's go back to that clip. We realize that burnout oftentimes kind of creeps in unnoticed, right? But what are some of the early signs, both spiritual, emotional, maybe even physical, that
Yeah.
might indicate, hey, burnout is here or it's on the horizon?
Yes. I love that you actually mentioned the physical
Yeah.
because there are physical symptoms. You would notice brain fog, like I just can't focus. Too many things, this sense of feeling overwhelmed a lot, tension in the body, muscle tension, lots of aches and pains. General malaise would be, just this general, I don't feel good. And no amount of caffeine can help. So I think what happens is everybody caffeinates and caffeinates and caffeinates, and all of a sudden that stops working. When that stops working, there's something else going on. So that's the physical. Spiritual is you just don't have the time. You're not spending the time. I would say your spiritual kind of flatlines. It's not that you are losing belief. There's just a lack of practice. You're not connecting with the Lord. You don't have time to go to church because you have to work on Sunday, or there's other things going on consistently. And then one of the biggest places you'll see it is your relationships. And people saying, I feel like you're never here. I feel like we don't have time. I feel like we're too busy. And a lot of folks I work with will blow that off because they don't understand my drive and my passion, my mission, my vision is important. I can't slow down for my wife and kids. So if that's the mind frame, that's what really starts to happen with burnout. So you'll hear it from your relationships.
So that's an interesting part about burnout, just those different aspects here. John, what are your thoughts? What do you see when you're working with people? What, organizations? How do you chat with them about when this is coming down the road for them?
I've got a model for that because it comes up so much, like Michelle said, Gilbert, and it's a fraction. Imagine a fraction, which is a line between a numerator, a number on the top, and a denominator on the bottom. So 3/4, 4/5, 5/6. And imagine the top of where the numerator is. That's your responsibilities, for work and productivity and relationships and self-care, all this sort. All the things, the demands of reality, because we talk a lot at the Institute about how character is what things are required, what capacities are required to meet the demands of reality. That's on the top. They're not bad things. Financial demands, you got to make a living, you got to, all this, raise kids, but they are burdens. They weigh X. On the bottom, put your resources. Now, what are your resources? Well, they're the people that can help you. They are the money you can spend on a good life. They are wisdom and information and data you need from people who can be your counselors or your wise person or your mentor or whatever. And your time is a resource. And then you look at that number. So if that number the numerator number is lower than the denominator number, like 1/3, that means you've got a lot more resources than you have responsibilities. I think I know maybe 2 people who have that life because they probably live on an island, drinking Mai Tais all day because but the 99.999% of us are over. We have more burdens than we have resource. Now, the goal is to get as close to 1 as possible, where that's the right harmony, let's say, to use your word, Ashlie. That's the right harmony, is 1/1. There's only 2 ways you can get that closer to 1. If it's like 10/1 or 100/12, how do you get that number? There's only 2 ways to get that number closer to 1. What would that be? You guys are both smart, so what is it?
You got to add more resources. You got to get rid of more responsibilities.
And there is the work.
Yeah.
Where you say either I can delegate out or prune back or get out of some dead wood. That's the numerator. Or I've got to add more people or time or finances or energy to doing this, or some kind of combination of both. But it's a pretty simple formula. It takes work, but at least it keeps it clear.
It keeps it clear. Well, that was great to learn from that episode.
I know I might, I don't know if I should text people and be like, I've put you in the deadwood category. We're not be able to talk to you.
I won't be calling you much anymore.
Yeah.
Work out so well. Well, that was great information for those to look at the warning signs of burnout and make that pivot. right? Sometimes it's time to make that pivot. So, well, we thank you, Dr. Michelle Fleming, for that episode as well. We're going to transition to our third and final episode that we want to recap here on our third anniversary of the Tips podcast. And that was an amazing episode with the amazing CEO, Anthony Flynn.
Anthony Flynn. Yes.
Anthony is just, I mean, you talk about someone who wears many hats, right? He just has so much experience in so many different industries, but he has found a way to have them intersect, right? This idea of leadership and business and ministry and his heart for serving with the nonprofit world. I'm sure this is something you've worked with a lot, John, because you yourself are someone who's made a business at the intersection of multiple different fields, right? Maybe talk a little bit about what a unique opportunity that is to take all these different aspects of your life and maybe your values and your passions and find a way for all of them to kind of meet together. Because in essence, that's a bit of what we are here at the Townsend Institute, right? Three of your areas all intersecting together.
Yeah, it's a good way to live, Ashlie. And as long as you can do things like avoid burnout or doing one at the expense of another. And I'm really big on vision strategy planning. I mean, behind me is this picture, this nice sunrise thing. But behind it, when this podcast is off, guess what it becomes? It's covering a whiteboard, a 6x3 whiteboard. And I spend a lot of time with highlighters on that whiteboard, mapping out me or mapping out clients or whatever, is to start by saying, okay, instead of like, I'll do this and then I'll try this next and I'll try this kind of organically. I've tried that and it's kind of like overwhelming. But if you can map out what am I about, go back to vision, why am I on the planet? What's my purpose here? And how can I do it in terms of what I am passionate about, because passion's a big deal, what I am competent about. I've got passion, but I don't have competence. Well, then that's just fun. That's a hobby. Like me and my sons, we have a band. We're passionate about it, but I'm not very competent. We get probably $100 a night plus tips. Can't put kids through college like that. But if you're passionate at something and you're competent at something and it provides for you, so it helps you to live your life and it has meaning. It's a bigger picture. It's a transcendent meaning. It makes the world a better place. Then you fit those things into the big pie, the pizza pie of your life. But you have to start with the big picture or you get really frustrated.
Well, and what's nice about Anthony is he talked about that. And I think he talked about how it's not just an easy path where all of this just naturally merged together on a trail. In fact, he created a blueprint, right? Let's play that clip. Let's hear about Anthony's blueprint.
As I have grown, I have learned so much about myself in terms of my gaps, my barriers. It's funny, even when you said I was chuckling because I went through this long-winded explanation and Ashley's like, "Oh yeah, you created a blueprint." And it's like, that's pretty simple. I could have just said I created a blueprint. But
yeah.
Right. So the point is like, I've got all these blind spots and these barriers and all of this stuff. And because I really am now in touch with a lot of that, I feel like I've been able to be successful because I'm honest about that.
So he talks about knowing is half the battle. Well, I kind of want to know more. Let's let our listeners that haven't heard that yet. Ashlie, what is this blueprint he speaks about?
Well, I think with Anthony, it came down just to the humility of it. Is sure he's had a lot of success because there's a lot that, as John talked about, he's passionate about, he's competent about, but then he also recognizes the places where he needs help, right? That he can't do it all himself. So the first part of that blueprint is knowing who you are, right? Being self-aware about those areas that are your strength and that you'll be able to contribute. But then the second piece he talks about is hire people that are smarter than you to fill in those gaps. Let's play that clip.
Yes.
I've been able to, in my mind, be successful because I've stepped into these organizations and gone, oh, okay, I know the 3 or 4 levers that I can pull where I can actually directly make things happen. But there's 15 other levers where I don't have the skill set or the wherewithal, so I need to hire.
Yeah.
And I literally do hire people who are, it's not just a statement, it's not cliche. hire people who are smarter than you to do the things that you are not great at. And I have probably my greatest asset is recognizing my weaknesses and and literally hiring people and surrounding myself with people who are better than me, smarter than me in areas where I know I'm not that great.
I love that. See the humility it takes for someone as amazing as our amazing CEO to come in and recognize maybe where those holes are and to bring people in that can help support and build up those businesses. Now, John, we referenced it a bit here today. You, of course, again, have published dozens and dozens of books, but getting ready to come out with your first textbook. There was a learning curve there. You've done a ton of writing and publishing, but talk a little bit about the team that you maybe leaned on, right? When it came to the textbook world, because we've heard you talk about it over the couple years. That was an arena that you weren't as familiar with. Can you maybe talk us through?
Yeah, talk
how
about
you had
people smarter than me. Yeah, that's a long list. The idea was I felt kind of a calling, and also because the Institute faculty or just dear friends and people I trust had said, your books are in our coursework that you've done all these years, but we need something that's not a popular mass market book. We need something that's technical now at a grad level, especially in the world of counseling. So I started working on it a few years ago. And when I was writing, I realized, well, my publisher is a great academic publisher, but they basically publish in the theological world, textbooks in theology and pastoral care, and did not anything about counseling. So I recruited several psychologist friends of mine, a lot of whom are full-time faculty here at the Institute, and some other people. My old buddy Henry Cloud is one. And I told him, I'm writing at a very technical level. I got all these references, and I've got a lot of stuff from journal articles, and I've got to be able to reach an audience of people that are, either seniors in college and majoring or in counseling, thinking they might go to grad school, because a bachelor's in counseling doesn't do a lot for you. So they're thinking about grad school, or people who are working on a master's somewhere.
Right.
And I don't write for that audience. So how do you do that? So I got these friends together, and I said, when I finish the book, I want you guys to take about a month after I'll send you the first draft, all you professional psychologists, before I send it to the publisher. You're my first team. And I said, don't tell me how beautiful my baby is. I don't need stroking on this. Tell me I got an ugly baby. And the book is like 600 pages with no pictures. So it's a lot of work, a lot of words there. And they took a month. And then they sent their thoughts back to me. Anything from, well, here's another journal article that you can use, or, well, you want to think about something diagnostically different here, or something in a technique that might help, or something in the theory. Very, very, very helpful. And I'm working through that right now. And it has been great to be around people that I respect so much and love so much, to know that they're going to make it a better book. So I'm a big fan of what Anthony calls that humility. Is like, humility just makes it saying, I accept reality, and they are making it a better book. I'm very, very blessed to have those folks.
Well, and I think some of it too, John, is that they have trust in you, that if they do have something that they'd like to see changed or challenged or whatever, that you're not going to give them a 45-minute lecture on why they're wrong. Right? I mean, you're not going to, shoot that down. They know, okay, he's actually open to this, and it's going to be a better product because of all
the baby could be better looking here. Right.
Yes, that's right. We can do a little work on it. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, we're excited. We know we're not long from getting that textbook. So, well, one of the last pieces of Anthony's episode that I think really stuck out to all of us is he talked about how important it is not to underestimate your potential, right? That so many times we hit this barrier or this ceiling by not recognizing just how far we can go, whether it's not just on our own, but obviously with the help of others as well. Let's listen in as he talked about how important it is not to underestimate our potential.
Don't overestimate who you actually are at the expense of underestimating who you have the ability to become.
Man, that was deep. Right? That was deep. And I think that's great, right? Really opening doors and thinking about just how far you can go with the help of others. Right. Is that an important thing? How do you think that plays out? I mean, Gilbert, thinking about you're on the front lines with our students all the time. And a lot of times they come in and for some they've been beaten down in their
Hmm.
careers or at work. They're maybe considering that career pivot. How do you help to encourage them to kind of get back to that, childhood awe of where can I go and dreaming these big dreams that sometimes we lose into adulthood?
Yeah. So some of our students, when they talk about what happens at residency, the process groups, where it's a vulnerable place where growth can happen, that they say, "Oh yeah, I had not looked at this, right? I had not thought about this harsh inner judge or something that had gone on in my leadership or in my coaching or probably counseling too or something." And so, how do I actually dig into this so then I can become who God created me to be? So yeah, that's just some thoughts that came up for me. What did you, Ashley? What comes up for you?
Yeah. I I think when I think about this idea of thinking about potential and where to go, it goes back to that relationship piece. And I know one piece that John talks a lot about in his teachings, and we really push here at the Townsend Institute, and is that idea of life team. And I
Hmm.
think what's so great for our students is oftentimes they get this idea of life team from the beginning of the program, and some of their classmates then become members of their life team. This small group of trusted individuals that can give you, we refer to it in the Institute as those relational nutrients. What do you need at given times? And sometimes you need the compassion, the support, the love, and other times you need a little bit of kick in the butt, right? To say, get up and go. And who can give you that truth, right? Of where you're at, and to encourage you to reach further and grow bigger, and other times to take that step back and just kind of, bloom where you're planted, so to speak. So I love seeing that growth no matter when and where it comes in our students. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Well, we have gone over a lot of ground today, and this has been, I think, so much fun, right? To kind of revisit some of these and 3 years into that. So we looked at 3 different episodes. I mean, how to think about all these numbers and stuff. So
I know. Congratulations, gentlemen. And we're over 80 episodes of this Townsend podcast. I mean, we would be remiss if, again, we didn't thank all of our podcast guests over the
mm,
past 3 years. Of course, Dr. Townsend for helping give us this launching pad and equipping Gilbert and I with these headphones and mics that have just been so much fun to wear
so-
over the past 3 years. And just our Townsend and Concordia community for being supportive.
And
We have
also,
more to come.
Ashley, you and Gilbert had an idea 3 years ago, and look what happened. So thank you so much for birthing a really cool way to get information to people for their growth.
Well, you're welcome. With the support of a lot of people, of course, we have to thank someone who is never seen or heard on camera, but we wouldn't be able to do all of this without Alex, right? We've got a
yeah,
big
so
team
we love.
behind us, and Alex, and we have more to come, everyone, right? This was just a highlight reel of our past 3 years, but we're excited about where this can go in the future, because really this is just meant to bring tips, to provide
Mhm.
insight and help for our listeners, no matter where you are in the world, whether you're, again, a part of our Townsend Institute here at Concordia or not, right? Opportunities for
Yet,
you
not
to,
yet.
not yet. That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So we have more to come, hopefully, in the years to come. But it's been fun to kind of relive some of these favorite moments.
And John, we got to end it the way we end all of them. What's a tip you want our listeners to walk away with today after revisiting these episodes and thinking about the last 3 years here?
Yeah, there's a term we use at the Institute called the neurological highlighter. It's just a
Mm.
phrase that means a lot to me because I believe that your brain is scanning for what's important or what's next in your life. And we just had three excerpts from three really accomplished people, from Bob to Michelle to Anthony, and people know a lot. You can't do everything, apply, a bunch of homework assignments. They just get too tired. But think through those, what you heard. Something grabbed you. There's some nugget grabbed you, and
Mhm.
that's when your brain went, I'm highlighting that, and think, how can I use that this week? And those little things make a big difference over a life.
Absolutely.
That.
Wow.
All right, get that neurological highlighter out. And while you're at it, to all of our listeners and now viewers, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and communicate with us. Let us know what you'd like to hear, maybe in the next 3 years of the Townsend Institute podcast series. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today, and happy anniversary, fellas.
Happy anniversary. Thank you.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.